Asics is probably one of the more popular running brands right now, and every year they have a couple of different daily training models that release and update. But which one is the right one for you? Today, we're comparing the Asics Gel Nimbus 27 versus the Asics Gel Cumulus 27. What's up everybody, I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod. You're watching Rad Dad Bod TV, where we review running shoes. Today, like I said, we're breaking down the Nimbus versus the Cumulus, and if it's your first time watching one of these videos, you may notice some timestamps below in the description. Feel free to jump around to the various parts of this comparison, but if you do so, I would sure appreciate if you come back and watch the full video when you get a sec, as I put a lot of time and effort into these. And if you've been a viewer for a while and you haven't hit that subscribe button just yet, sure appreciate it if you did so, and turn on notifications so you get notified every time I drop a new video, which is typically Monday through Friday. Now, kicking us off with some quick disclaimers and disclosures, I got both of these shoes for free directly from Asics for the purpose of review. That being said, I'm not paid for these reviews, not paid for these videos. I'm not asked to include these shoes in any specific content. No one gives me talk tracks, talking points, anything along those lines, and no one watches the videos beforehand. All thoughts are entirely my own. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the intended use of these two shoes. The Gel Nimbus is going to be kind of your classic max cushion shoe. So typically it's going to be used for daily miles, recovery runs, easy runs, potentially even long runs, depending on what type of shoe you like to take on your long runs. The Cumulus, on the other hand, is more of a standard daily trainer, but still is going to be good for kind of those daily miles. Maybe you can pick up the pace a little bit, but for the most part, you're still going kind of steady, recovery, long run, a little bit along those lines. It's just not going to be quite as robust as the max cushion option. Moving on to the price, the Gel Nimbus comes in at $165, which is pretty typical for a max cushion shoe. And the Cumulus comes in at $140, which is actually on the lower end for a daily trainer. So there is about a $25 price gap between the two. Moving on to the weight, the Gel Nimbus comes in at 10.7 ounces and 305 grams, versus the Cumulus comes in at 9.2 and 261 grams. So there's about a 1.5 gram difference between the two shoes, and honestly, holding them here in hand right now, it's fairly noticeable. Then from a stack standpoint, the Gel Nimbus comes in at 43.5 in the heel, 35.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm heel to toe drop, and the Cumulus comes in at 41 in the heel, 33 in the forefoot for an 8mm heel to toe drop. So both have that 8mm drop, which is pretty typical for most Asics models, so that's going to feel familiar, but the stack height is a little bit higher in the Gel Nimbus. Now from a fit perspective, I do feel like the shoes fit pretty similar overall. I would say both are not just wide foot friendly, but might even be actively wide. From a length standpoint, I would say they fit true to size, so I wear a 10.5, and both of these are a 10.5, so pretty standard sizing there. All in all, I would say both shoes are very accommodating, again, wide foot friendly for sure. Now moving to the uppers, the Gel Nimbus has an engineered jacquard mesh, which is a little bit more breathable than the knit from past models, but is still going to be a little bit warm overall. In addition to that engineered jacquard, you also have a very, very plush cushioned heel there that you can see kind of in the heel counter, and then you have this nice kind of knit stretch tongue. I find that despite being wide, the tongue is fully gusseted and it is this knit material, so you can get some pretty good lockdown in the shoe, which was something that I struggled in the previous model. Overall, the shoe is very, very comfortable. It is going to be warm. It is going to be a shoe that's going to kind of cook a little bit in the summers, but for the most part, it's standard to what you get for a max cushion shoe. You're going to get a lot of plush in that upper. Overall, I would say it just is very comfortable. Now with the Cumulus, you have a pretty much standard engineered mesh. The upper is not anything super special. It does have some decent cushioning there in the heel, but not nearly as much as the Gel Nimbus. I actually think the engineered jacquard is going to be a little bit more breathable as a whole, but because of all the extra cushion in the Nimbus, I do feel like that's a little bit warmer. The Cumulus is not like the most breathable in the world though. It still is, I would say, like within normal ranges though, and not going to be quite as warm as the Nimbus itself. The tongue is also fully gusseted with some light padding, so you get some good lockdown in the shoe. Again, despite being wide, I didn't feel like I was shifting around in it at all, but the shoe definitely is noticeable on foot in terms of that extra width that you're going to be getting there. And then I will say one thing that was a little bit annoying, but not like a huge issue, was that the tongue did bunch up a little bit down here at kind of the insertion point. It wasn't anything that I noticed on the runs that caused any headache though. Between the two uppers, I don't have any real strong feelings. I do think that the Gel Nimbus upper is really comfortable, maybe more comfortable overall, but like I said, it is warm, so if you're wanting something a little bit lighter, then the Cumulus kind of fills that gap. Moving to the midsole, you have FF Blast Plus Eco, which I believe is a EVA OBC mix or blend, and then you have the pure gel disc there in the heel. Now, one thing that's different mainly between the Cumulus and the gel Nimbus, because you also have the FF Blast Plus setup here, but it's not the eco version, so it's not as environmentally conscious or friendly. It's not necessarily made of recycled material like the gel Nimbus is. You also do have that gel unit in the heel, so a little bit of extra comfort there. But what I find is the FF Blast Plus in the Cumulus does seem to be a little bit softer, whereas the gel Nimbus version is soft yet supportive. In fact, in some ways it is almost firmer than a lot of foams out there, even though it looks like it's going to feel like a marshmallow. It's definitely not a squishy foam. Over here, again, on the Cumulus, I feel like it's a little bit softer overall. Maybe the recycled version or the eco version is just a little bit different in terms of that kind of tuning. Now, I would say both shoes are pretty inherently stable, though not stability shoes. And so I think both are going to be really, really good options if you are someone who wants some stability. Part of that is because of the wider overall bases of the shoes as well. So with the wide upper, the wide fit, the wide base, I don't feel like I'm ever really overpronating. If anything, I feel kind of locked into the shoes, which is kind of nice if you do need some kind of light support overall. Now, from an overall sensation underfoot though, what I'll say is the gel Nimbus is going to be really more of kind of a plotter, right? Like, I think that this is mainly a recovery day shoe. Some people use it as a standard daily trainer. For me, it just doesn't quite work that way. I don't get as much like energy return as I would really be looking for. Not to say that the gel Cumulus is a shoe that I'm going to be ripping intervals in though, right? The gel Cumulus, I do think it's a little bit softer. I do think it's a little bit more responsive, but really I think what makes this a little bit lighter option for you is just quite literally like the weight. So it is literally lighter. And so if you're someone who often feels the weight of a shoe and that kind of wears on you on your runs, and you like to feel a little bit more light on foot when you're doing your easy runs, then that's where the gel Cumulus might feel nice in terms of kind of that underfoot feel. Now, moving to the outsoles, you can see that the gel Nimbus 27 has that Asics hybrid grip outsole, which I feel like it gets the job done. It's nothing to write home about, but you know, decent coverage overall. They have those cutouts to kind of save some weight as well. So overall, like a nice outsole, not the most grippy in the world. But then moving over to the Cumulus, you can see that there actually isn't really a true outsole. And what this is, it's a rubberized EVA foam, which is similar to what was used in like the Hoka Mach 5. If you remember, they didn't have a traditional outsole. You kind of had this rubberized foam. So this is going to save some weight. It almost just kind of extends the midsole, but adds a little bit of durability there on the bottom. But oftentimes that's going to take away some of the potential traction. So you don't really have much of a traction pattern on dry roads, on treadmill, on things like that. Like the shoe did totally fine. It wasn't any concern. But if you do get on something slick or any off-road terrain whatsoever, I do feel like that would kind of maybe tear up a little bit, like the durability is not going to be great. And then obviously the traction is going to struggle a little bit on more slicker surfaces. So I like the general idea of the weight savings because that's really kind of what you're looking at between these two shoes. Like the stacks aren't so different. Really the Cumulus is just supposed to be kind of a little bit more of a lightweight package versus the gel Nimbus is kind of a tank in a lot of regards. Now, as far as my pick between the two, if you watch my videos, I think this is the second one this week where I talk about how I'm not a big max cushion guy, right? Now, what's funny is, you know, 41 in the heel on the gel Cumulus, this still is max cushion, right? But it doesn't run like a max cushion shoe, and it's not necessarily the stack that I'm not a fan of in shoes, it's more so the weight of max cushion shoes. So usually when you get those super high stacks, you get a lot of weight underfoot. That really seems to wear me down. I run with heavy feet apparently. And so, you know, I've actually been really pleasantly surprised with my miles in the gel Cumulus. I just kind of feel like it's got a little bit more spring. It's not, again, it's not something I'm going to be ripping intervals in by any means, but it is a shoe that I feel like I can just go out and not feel like the shoe is holding me back. Versus with the gel Nimbus, I just do feel like it is a little bit heavy, a little bit bulky. So the Cumulus, while it's nothing to really write home about, I think it's going to do great for people who really like more of a traditional feel in the shoe. Maybe you don't want a shoe that feels like it has crazy stack, or you don't want a ton of bells and whistles. It's kind of like your classic runner style shoe. So that would be my pick, but the Gel Nimbus 27, I was pleasantly surprised at how the shoe felt, and actually I really enjoyed my miles in it. It's just that I always will prefer a lighter shoe overall. Just some final thoughts. You know, if you're like me and you do feel like you need an easy day shoe because maybe your daily trainer, like you just feel like you pick up too much, you speed up too much in the shoe, and so sometimes people gravitate towards like a max cushion shoe because it you know, feels like it weighs them down a little bit, it slows them down. So if you don't love the feeling of a max cushion shoe, and you're looking for something that has a similar overall profile to the Nimbus, but is just going to be lighter in overall package, then I think that the Cumulus is a really good option there. So for me, like, I would use the Cumulus the same way that I would the Nimbus, which is primarily just easy recovery runs. But overall, I think Asics does a really good job with not just their daily trainers. They have a really good just lineup across the board. And so I know they have some really cool stuff coming out. The Cumulus and the Nimbus are not the most flashy of releases, but I think it's been a solid showing so far for Asics in 2025. So if you're still watching, I sure appreciate you. Please take a second, leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you enjoyed about this comparison, or if there's other comparisons that you would like to see that I haven't already done. And as always, I'll leave you with a question, which is, if you've tried both the Gel Nimbus and the Gel Cumulus, which one do you prefer and why? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks everybody.